It was a mild Thursday morning when Nikki Kuhnhausen left her friend's home to meet up with a man that she had met the night before. She had spent the early part of the morning chatting with him on Snapchat using her friend's phone. The two had set up a meeting, maybe a romance or maybe just a quick hookup. Youthful, vibrant, and fiercely independent, Nikki lived her life on her own terms, and she did what she wanted to do. She didn't tell her friends where she was going or when she would be back. That just wasn't in her nature. And no one immediately thought anything was out of the ordinary that morning. And when she didn't come back later in the day, there was always a chance she had gone to stay with her mother or even with some other friends. 4 days later, though, no one had seen Nikki or heard from her. Her mother, Lisa Woods, said that the two generally spoke every day or two, always keeping in touch. On June the 10th, her mother really began to worry. Checking with Nikki's friends, they let her know that they had not seen her since she left their place that last morning.
A Vancouver teen is missing and believed to be in danger. Police say no one's heard from her since the beginning of this month. She was last seen getting into a man's car near 4th Plain Boulevard and Brant Road. That's where Fox 12's Audrey Wheel joins us live. Audrey?
Yeah, this is 17-year-old Nikki Kuhnhausen, and family, friends, and investigators are all desperate to find her. They've passed out about 500 of these flyers, hoping someone can help.
She's nowhere else.
Lisa Woods pledges a photo of her daughter whom she hasn't seen in weeks.
This is my daughter. This is my baby. This is my reason for living. I can't function.
Nikki hasn't spoken to her mom, who she usually talks to every day.
She's being prevented from contacting me. She is being held in some situation where she cannot reach me because that's all she's trying to do right now. She's screaming for me, she's calling out my name, and I don't know where she is. And I can't reach her.
Now Woods just hoping someone else will know where her daughter is and bring her back.
Before we start, we would like to extend our deepest sympathies to the loved ones of Nikki Kuhnhausen, who lost her life in this devastating case. Lisa Woods called the Vancouver Police Department and filed a missing persons report on her daughter, and local law enforcement were put on the lookout. There were extenuating circumstances that made the situation more urgent. Nikki was only 17 years old, a month shy of her 18th birthday, no matter how outgoing, fearless, and mature she may have seemed. Nikki was also a trans woman, and in that year, there had already been 24 cases of trans people being murdered in the U.S. just for who they were. She was a minor and a person who could find herself the target of a hate crime. Nikki, born Nikos Kuhnhausen, decided at the age of 6 that she was a girl, even though she had been assigned male gender at birth. Supported by her mother, Nico became Nikki and went on about her life, unapologetic and refusing to be scared or intimidated by classmates or others about her choice. The question was, where had Nikki gone? And who was she with? Why hadn't she gotten in touch with anyone? Friends and family members put up missing person posters all over Vancouver and nearby Portland, Oregon. Surely someone would have seen her and possibly taken note, but no one called with any information. Her mother, Lisa Woods, began to investigate on her own, trying every avenue to find out where her daughter was, hopefully before it was too late. Her mother began to check with Nikki's many friends until she found her first lead on what may have happened. On June the 13th, Woods told Vancouver police officer Jake Carlo that Nikki had left her friend's apartment around 6 a.m. with an unnamed Russian man. 6 days later, on June the 19th, one of Nikki's friends, Tiffany McConnell, calls the Vancouver Police Department and tells Officer Brandon DeGraw also that Nikki had left that morning in the company of a Russian man. Around the same time, Lisa Woods, the mother, had been able to get more information and contacts Officer Jake Carlo again. She tells him that Nikki had been using the cell phone of Faith Fields, one of the women that Nikki had been staying up late with on the night before she had disappeared. She said the cell phone was used to talk with the man and set up a date. The information leads to the very first piece of evidence for them to hang their hat on. Detective David Jansen of the Vancouver Police Department contacts Lisa back to find out that Snapchat had been used between Nikki and the man. Her friends knew Nikki's username for the app and shared it with the police. Detectives sent an emergency request for information to Snapchat to reveal the chats that Nikki had engaged in the night before she disappeared and that morning. The following day, an official search warrant was provided to the company and the information was disclosed. It was now June the 27th, 22 days since any of her friends or family members had seen or made contact with Nikki. Now, though, investigators had something to work with. Snapchat was able to recover the chat from that morning and divulged the contact information for the username of the person she had been talking to and eventually met up with. The man was David Bogdanoff. A then 25-year-old contractor who had emigrated to the U.S. many years before. He lived in Vancouver, as did all of his brothers, all of whom were tradesmen and contractors in the area. Police were able to get warrants to track his phone's geolocations on the night and morning in question, and found that he had been at his brother Stan's house on that evening, and had been in the southern part of the city near where Nikki had been staying the next morning. Finally, they had found the next step in tracking down where Nikki may have disappeared to. Now they had a person of interest who could hopefully provide them with some idea of what might have happened. But they hit a brick wall. Even though they had attempted to interview him the very next day on June the 28th, Bogdanoff had left the country in the time between Nikki's disappearance and the discovery of his Snapchat texts. Bogdanoff had bought a one-way ticket to the Ukraine. He wasn't just hard to find, he was half a world away, ostensibly visiting family there. The next few months would crawl by with no information on Nikki's case. She had not turned up, no one had come forward with any new information, and Nikki never returned on her own. The wait would continue until Bogdanoff returned home. As soon as he did, detectives with the Vancouver Police Department brought him in for questioning. Any information he had could be vital to the investigation. On October 2nd, 2019, Bogdanoff came in and was questioned about his encounter with Nikki. Bogdanoff seemed helpful and told the detectives that he had been out drinking with his brother that night. On their way home, they had seen Nikki walking home, and Bogdanoff had talked his brother into pulling over so they could talk with her.
Since they parked on the road, I saw Nikki walking across the street by herself. I told my brother to wait in the car. She just seemed a little upset. And trying to talk to her, she just was as if she was just like looking right through me, looking at each other. But she's like looking past me. We had a brief conversation. I just wanted to check up on her, see that she's doing okay. So in the middle of the night, she's walking by herself, middle of downtown. It's not the safest of places. To see that she's okay. Chatted to her for a little bit just to see if she needs any help. If she needs a ride anywhere, if she could just say no. Basically, she's fine. At one point, I gave her my jacket. It was chilly outside. Gave her my Snapchat and she had to remember it when she told me about her voice. I can't remember exactly what time it was, but Nikki had to be on Snapchat. It was probably a couple hours after our initial interaction. Saw her on the street. She had dropped off an address and told me to come pick her up. On Snapchat, she just sent me either a pin or just the address. I took Stan's van. We had just that one car between the two of us at that time, and drove by myself to go pick up Nikki.
He said he chatted with Nikki online that night and made plans to meet up with her the next morning. He said he did. They talked for a while and she left on her own, but didn't tell him where she was going. And basically, that was that. Another lead that just ran into an apparent dead end. Nikki didn't have her phone on her, and there was nothing to track her movement from that point on. The last contact was with a young man who had openly admitted to coming into contact with her on the night before and meeting up with her again the next day, only to have her walk away from his van and truly disappear. There was nothing in Bogdanov's history to make him any kind of actual suspect. He had no criminal history as far as anyone could see. The investigation just stalled out, and life went on for the people in the Vancouver-Portland area. Friends and family kept up their vigil, but Nikki's disappearance had moved from the front pages and the news broadcasts into relative obscurity. The remains were found in a brushy area at the bottom of a steep hill with a road above, and the first thing the hikers saw was a human skull. Then the remains of the other body parts were scattered here and there. They immediately contacted local police and a crime scene was established at the location. Forensic teams combed the area and recovered an almost entire human skeleton, along with a brightly colored jacket and some other personal effects, and what would eventually be declared the weapon used to kill the person. A cell phone recharging cord had been looped around the neck of the victim. A few strands of the victim's hair were still caught in the knot. Among the debris and the loam of the forest floor, a few rings and other pieces of jewelry were also found. Initially, police were cautious about declaring these as Nikki's remains, even though the remains did suggest someone of her size and build. The clothing scraps found on the site roughly matched what she was thought to be wearing. The jacket also could have been a match for the one that she was given by Bogdanov the night before her disappearance. The police waited for positive identification by the medical examiner's office, who were able to extract and match DNA for Nikki with those found on the remains and in the strands of hair in the knotted cell phone recharging cord. While they waited on those results, they looked back over the cell phone's geolocations of Bogdanov on the day of Nikki's disappearance, wherein they found the evidence they needed. Bogdanov had been near that location on Larch Mountain on that very morning. On December 17th, with the evidence in hand and positive identification of the remains, the police arrested Bogdanov and brought him in for questioning. At first, during the interrogation, Bogdanov stuck with his original story.
When we spoke to you last time, I don't think you recall the conversation, but you said that you met her earlier in the evening, met her downtown, hung out with her for a while, drank some vodka together, gave her a coat, and then she went home and then you met her again. Does that ring a bell? Yeah. What you told us at the time was that you and Stan went back to Archer's house up there at 114, and you needed your van because you were going to work. Stan needed to take his van to his job, right? And at that time was when Nikki told you that Nikki was really heated, and that's when you're like, I'm not into this, and kicked her out of the van, sent her on her way. Okay. Then after that, you said that you went. So you said you were going to go to Stan's. You were saying you were going to go to Stan's job site. No. Okay. Oh, your other one was Arthur's job site. Okay. So you're going to go to his job site, but then you ended up. You're going to go to your job site. You ended up just staying at your job site. Yeah, I was confused. I don't remember. Yeah. It sounded like you said that you were going to go to your job site. Yeah, you went to work. What got us here today is I want to talk to you about a trip that you took before you went to the job site.
The detectives give him a chance to revise his story, to put in anything about that day that he might have left out. Bogdanov shrugs and says that maybe he stopped at a gas station, but otherwise sticks to his original story. The interrogator tells him that they know he went somewhere right after, leading him to the idea that they knew where he went without telling him directly.
Ask me additional questions because you go from there to people counsel. Okay. That is what's going on.
All right, sit down.
Down here, and we are going to finish doing some paperwork. That's the other things you need to do in the little while. Okay. We may put you in a temporary holding cell for a bit. Get you something to drink. You're probably going to be here for a little while, and then you're going to be booked. All right.
The Vancouver Police Department then held a press conference to announce that they had made an arrest in the case and that the march towards justice would begin.
Detectives were eventually able to contact Mr. Bogdanov. He confirmed in a meeting with him that he had picked Nikki up at the apartment that morning. David and Nikki went to a residence in the county, and at this time, David says Nikki told him that she was biologically male. David gave a statement that made him really, really uncomfortable and disturbed him, and he asked Nikki to get out of his van, and she walked away. According to David, that was the last time she was seen. More investigative information came in, showed a number of inconsistencies with the statement that he made to detectives. Based on the location of the remains and the earlier claimed evidence, detectives decided to conduct a second interview with David. The detective contacted him yesterday, and he declined to give any further statements. At that point, he was arrested.
Bogdanov was charged with second-degree murder, a crime in the state of Washington that could see a penalty of up to 20 years in prison. The police explained how they came to make that specific charge. Bogdanov was brought before the court and a motion for bond was denied. It was pointed out that after the event and the disposal of the body, he had a friend get rid of the vehicle that he had been driving during the time and then bought a one-way ticket to the Ukraine. He is leaving the United States and being completely unreachable during that time had to weigh heavily on the decision to keep him under lock and key until the trial. The vehicle, by the way, has never been located. It would be August of 2021 before Bogdanoff would come to trial and see a verdict rendered in the Clark County, Washington Superior Court. In the intervening year and a half, a grassroots organization called Justice for Nikki Task Force had emerged to make sure that the hate crime nature of the murder would not be forgotten. They also, most importantly, wanted to make sure that the defense team's use of a trans-panic defense would gain no traction. Unable to distance himself from the event or the killing, Bogdanoff's defense rested more on an explanation that the killing was not intentional, but had resulted in an attempt to defend his own life in a fight that erupted between the two once he found out that she was biologically a man.
I opened the door for Nikki, she got in, and then I went around and got in the driver's seat myself. While I was filling up, I realized I needed to use the bathroom, and so I stopped by back at the house. I was just around the corner and went to use the bathroom. I went inside the house, Nikki stayed in the car, and I was gone for a couple of minutes maybe to use the bathroom, and then I came back to the car. I came back and I opened my driver's door and saw that Nikki was moved to the back seat now in the back of the car. I was anticipating, thought that we were just gonna hook up probably, and I was gonna drop her off. I eventually got in the back seat. She invited me to come sit back with her. Before I got into the back seat, I removed my gun that was on me. When she invited me to come sit in the back, I removed my gun. I told her that I concealed carry. Concealed carry permit so that she doesn't freak out or anything. And I reached in and wedged the gun between the center console and the driver's seat and pulled the seat back and just wedged it there. It's where oftentimes happens, so if I'm sitting in the driver's seat, it's right back with me. Chatted for a little bit. That transitioned into us making out. Over, I was just bent over. I reach over and put my hand in her hands. I worked around the layers of clothing. Again, clothing was clearly balls and beans. It was a shock. I just deceived. I freaked out. Push your back towards the passenger's door. And start freaking out. I'm sorry if I cussed, but I was saying, what the fuck? What is this? You didn't tell me you were doing it. And started yelling at her. So I said she's disgusting piece of crap. She lunges at me and hits me across the face.
Okay. And then how do you react?
I shove her kind of hard, trying to push her back through the driver's seat. Keep telling her to just get the fuck out of my car.
Okay. Then what does she do?
When she hit the passenger door with her back, when I shoved her, she kind of picked up her foot and tried to just kick me with her foot from the passenger side. And at that time, I tried to swipe her feet so she doesn't hit me in the face, and I lock her feet and I put them down into the footwell. And at that time, when I put him down, she just jumps up and goes towards the center console, towards my gun. At this point, the overwhelming feeling and thought was the fight or flight mode just kicks in. And and all I can think is, oh my God, I'm gonna get shot right now. This person is crazy. Just back and forth struggle between me and trying to pull her back, her trying to hit me in my face and reach forward for the gun at the same time.
He then said that in the struggle he reached for the first thing he could find to help him in the fight, a charging cable that was lying on the center console between the seats.
I couldn't get a hold of her, couldn't stop her, and then in the passenger seat, the front passenger seat, the rear pocket, was hanging out my phone cord, my charging cable, and in that struggle, I grabbed that cable and put it around her, and so I could hold on to it and hold her back like that, and hold her from keep going forward. Done. I pull her back and try to keep her from the ground and just to the side a little bit.
What is she doing?
And the whole time she's trying to fight me and just reaching back and scratching at my face, trying to gouge my eyes. I'm just trying to keep my head away from her hands and struggling with her. And the whole time I was just yelling for her to stop. I was just wanting to keep her from firing her from the gun, to maybe open the door somehow and just pull her out, kick her out of the car. But she was just actively fighting me and scratching my eyes, trying to scratch me out of my eyes. She passed out. She just passed out. I've seen on TV fighting sports, they choke out and just go to sleep for a little bit. I push her off to the side and go for my gun myself to see through the gun.
He did not, however, explain why the cord had been knotted after it was put around her neck. Jurors and attendees of the trial were not moved by the idea that he had used the cord as some kind of a defensive instrument.
So it's tied into a circle, right? Can you tell me about that? Do you know why it was like that?
Yes.
Can you explain that?
It's a really long cable. It's 5 or 6 foot cable. And I was using it in my center console to charge my phone, and because it's so long, it always keeps falling in between the passenger seat and the center console and getting under the seat and getting stuck every time. Every time I'm having to fish it out from under there whenever I'm trying to use it. So what I did is just folded it in half so that the two ends, the USB end and the end that goes into the phone, are together.
While the sad state of the remains after nearly 6 months in the wild would not be able to show any bruising or soft tissue injuries telling the story of the struggle, the strangulation and knotting of the cord gave life to the idea that it had just slipped up from Nikki's shoulder during the struggle. In addition, the gun he said Nikki had attempted to grab could not be found. It can only be presumed that it was disposed of just like the vehicle the two had been in.
Came back around to check up on Nikki, and she wasn't waking up. And I started trying to check if she's breathing,
Was she?
And then, Nikki Kuhnhausen, just 17 years old, was dead, killed at the hands of a man that she had met just the night before, and whom she may have engaged with sexually just minutes before. A young light had been snuffed out, and the dire nature of what happened washed over Bogdanov.
I'm scared. I don't know what to do. First thing I think is I need to call the police. And then I think that they're not going to believe me. I've been up all night, not sober. There's drugs in the car. There's dead persons in the back seat. there. I think it was, didn't want my family to know. I just wanted to put this behind me. Like, permission to this that never happened. I've been up to a large mountain before shooting, just started practicing. And it's a really close spot to Rush Prairie. It's 15-20-minute drive up there. Thought it was a remote place to go. We got out of the car and it was a spot by the road. The hill just went down really steep. I just kind of pushed her down that.
The encounter, the act, the violence, and the death, along with the attempted cover-up, had been brought out to light. The case went to the jury, and eventually they returned with a guilty verdict of second-degree murder. Because of the hate crime nature of the murder, he was also found guilty of malicious harassment. Judge David Gregson would pass sentencing on Bogdanoff a month later, handing down a sentence of 234 months for the second-degree murder charge and 12 months for the malicious harassment. The terms would run concurrently. The judge says he was struck by the darkness of the case and the callous disposal of the body. The idea that 17-year-old Nikki could have been anyone's son or daughter was not lost on him, he continued. The defense had requested the lowest sentence possible be handed down to Bogdanoff because he had no prior criminal history. However, the judge was not moved. David Bogdanoff is currently serving his sentence at the Washington Corrections Center in Shelton, Washington. Nikki's remains were cremated, and while there is no public gravesite to visit, her legacy has been honored with the Nikki Kuhnhausen Act, a Washington state law that prevents the use of a trans panic defense.